Hello. Welcome to Normal Islands Live. I'm, of course, Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by the superb Helena, aka No Justice MTG. How was your weekend?
It was wonderful. I had a really good weekend, and I'm looking forward to the show as always. Good, best way to start the week is with a Monday edition of Turn Left, and glad to have everybody on board with us tonight.
Well, absolutely. There's no better way. I mean, no diss to the other team members and other guests, but come on. Helena on a Monday, can't get any better. So I'm glad you're on tonight. This is what we've got coming up on tonight's show. Andrea Jenkins and Zach Palanski spar over reforms Russia links. Hubs are banning Labour MPs over anger from business rates. And the right wing have been weaponising the horrific Australia shootings. You can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member. But on to our first story. Zach Palanski and Reform's Andrea Jenkins appeared on the Jeremy Vine show, and they sparred over the Russia controversy, although Jenkins mounted quite a weak defence.
Do you think your party's too close to Russia?
Oh no, how ridiculous. This is where the left just keep pushing that out, isn't it?
Well, no, I just saw that guy, was it Nathan Gill, went to prison.
No, but there's always one bad egg in whatever party,
spying,
isn't there? It's disgusting,
Yeah.
But there's a bad egg in every party, isn't there?
Well, I don't know.
I don't think it's the courts that are pushing it out. I think it's reality that's pushing it out. Nathan Gill went to prison for 10.5 years. I think 7 or 8 other people are implicated who are involved with, as it was known, UKIP at that time, of the Brexit Party.
No, but Nigel and, none of us are involved with Russia. And also, let's face it, the left, people like yourself, who was a big Remainer, Zach, have been putting these conspiracy theories out during Brexit, during, on the rise of reform. You always try to align anybody who's not your views with Russia. It's getting a bit tight.
Go on. Say what the evidence is.
I don't think it's conspiracy theories. So we've got evidence now that this happened. In fact, Nathan Gill, this wasn't a random person. He was the leader of the Brexit Party in Wales. And Nigel Farage for a while said he didn't really know who he was. But on the day of Brexit, there's a picture where Nigel Farage is there, and right over his shoulder is Nathan Gill. And when I asked Zia Youssef about this, he kind of said, Nigel Farage didn't really know him. He meets lots of people. He was the leader of reform in Wales. That's not...
Well, do you know every party member?
I know the leader of the Wales Green Party.
He was the leader of Welsh Reform. We obviously knew him. He didn't know he was spying.
No, but of course... but none of us know. I mean, you could be a spy, for God's sake.
I agree that none of us know, but when there's 8 people, it starts to look a little bit suspicious.
What rubbish.
Or is there
I'm
just
really sick of this. Right since the Brexit years, all anybody ever does, if you've got a different view to the BBC, etc., or mainstream media, you get as if you're aligned to Putin.
Well,
Putin's vile.
Well,
Putin really wanted to
Zach, give it your
Europe
best shot.
as well. We've got a weakened European Union now, and that plays into Putin's hands. And
Gosh, so we've got a Green Party leader who's also into conspiracy theories.
I don't think it's conspiracy theory at all to say that Putin is not a fan of the
but I'm
European
saying
Union.
aligning reform with that,
But he went to prison for 10.5 years.
Yeah,
that's not me. That's what actually happened.
One person.
But there are other
Are you trying to say that I'm aligned to Putin?
No, not at all. I have no idea what you think about Putin. But I do know there are other people in your party who are implicated. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's just fact.
But the fact is, we're a big party. We are the biggest party in the UK now. You're going to get some bad eggs. You wait. You'll find some bad eggs coming out of the woodwork.
I mean, I expected Jenkins to do better than that. I mean, not because she's particularly an astute politician, but that response was utterly weak. I mean, look, I think there's a difference between, a random member of a party and the former Welsh leader. I mean, Zach is also right. It's not just Nathan Gill. It's 8 other people who are possibly involved. I mean, it's clear reform has a Russia problem. And also, what is she talking about when she says the left are pushing this conspiracy theory? I mean, I find that odd since, to be honest, the left, talks way more about other issues than Russia. It talks about Israel more. I find that liberals are the ones who make everything about Russia. Liberals are the ones who say Brexit happened because of Russia. Trump happens because of Russia. The left doesn't do that. I mean, I don't know, maybe Russia factored into it a bit. I don't know. But mostly the political establishment failed and people voted for change, whether that be through Brexit or Donald Trump. We actually have a material analysis for these things as opposed to Russia, Russia, Russia. But the media have a big problem too. They will be happy to talk about the Russian links as a problem, as they should. Yet money and doing the bidding of Israel, utter silence. Labour, Reform and the Tories will happily support Israel. Both Labour and the Conservatives have literal lobby groups supporting the state, yet the media won't talk about any of that. I mean, how many times have you seen a pundit grill an MP on their Israel donations or taking trips over there? Never. Now, Zach has brought up the fact that the government has increased its trade with Israel. So whilst the media are happy to jump on the Reform Russia story, they won't ask these sorts of questions of any Labour or Conservative MP. Helena, do you think the Russian story is sticking and affecting Reform support?
Yeah, I really do think that it is. It seems to be one of the biggest unifying positions in British politics, is this idea that we are worried about the influence of Russia, both broadly in our politics, but in terms of the impact that it has on us geopolitically, especially with regards to how it's affected our relationship with Europe and the perceived collusion between Russia and the Trump administration, and that relationship then being kind of passed on across to Reform UK, where we're also seeing members of their party either directly implicated in Russian collusion when it comes to Nathan Gill, or at the very least tangentially implicated, so much so that there's more investigations ongoing. And this is the same guy who said that he admired Vladimir Putin all those years ago. And for Andrew Jenkins to say that it's a conspiracy theory that Russia got itself involved in the Brexit referendum, this is true. We know that they had this stuff going on at the time because they were engaging in very similar kinds of psyops in Ukraine between 2014 and 2022 during the kind of proxy war that was going on in eastern Ukraine at the time. And wanting to break the UK off from a united Europe was in the interests of Russia, so they have a less united front against them when they're trying to push, if they try and push westwards, which we've seen that they're now happy to do so. Obviously, they were pushing south into Georgia for quite a while, but this move into Ukraine is definitely a new phase of their kind of expansionary imperialist policy. And when it comes to Europe, them being less united is good for Russian politics and trying to bring people into their sphere of influence, which is the same is true of the United States as well, who know that in search of more broader corporate power, the EU is a bulwark against that in some respects. And it's not a total bulwark because they do still believe in lots of free trade and pro-business propositions. But in terms of corporate hegemony, there are at least some guardrails that the EU has that the US doesn't have in terms of things like antitrust and their pretty aggressive regulation of monopolies, which the US doesn't like. And as we can see from Trump, he gets mad at EU protecting consumers and wants to override that by using trade belligerence. So there's a real act where you see the people on, especially the far right, actually don't have a patriotic mindset, are actually against the interests of this country because they're serving bigger masters elsewhere. And people will see that not only as being against their own personal interest in terms of what their politics is, but also it shows that these people are charlatans in the ways in which that their rhetoric about what they believe for the country is totally at odds with their actions in terms of being in hoc to powers overseas.
Yeah. I mean, I personally think, and you probably agree, you might disagree, but I think that had we hadn't had decades of austerity, for example, had the political establishment not failed, we wouldn't have had Trump or Brexit. And I think the Liberals are quite quick to say it was all down to Russia. They absolutely play a part. They absolutely play a part. I just thought it was very odd that Andrea Jenkins was saying the left are pushing this conspiracy, but I suppose that's just a broader trend of the right wing sort of merging liberals and the left as one and the same when we're very, very different.
I think that's an important point. It is worth specifically pointing out that there is two sides to this. In one side, there's the right who say it's a total conspiracy. There's no evidence at all that there was collusion between Russia and Brexit or Russia and Trump in the form of what happened in 2016 in both the US presidential election and in the Brexit referendum. And there's the liberals who go, we are totally blameless. There's nothing wrong here. Our politics is perfect, and the only reason we lost at this referendum and this election was because of Vladimir Putin. When the reality is neither of those things. The reality is the failures of Obama and the failures of David Cameron led to Brexit and Trump. The failures of liberalism more broadly to not deal with the underlying problems that led to the financial crisis in the first place and the negative externalities that came from that. But was there Russian collusion? Well, we know there was Russian collusion. We know about things like Cambridge Analytica. We know about what's happening with Paul Manafort, meeting with 2 Russian oligarchs specifically whilst he was managing the Trump campaign. This is Deripaxa and Kalimnik, and they even had discussions about the future of Ukraine within those talks as well. Was that enough to sway the election? Well, I probably don't think that it was, neither in the case of Brexit or in the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton was a shit candidate who didn't have anything other than praise for the failed paradigm that led up to the financial crisis that caused the breakdown in American society. And of course, she bought into the neoliberal rhetoric that led to the destruction of manufacturing communities in, Detroit, Michigan, or whatever. Those are all problems, and she didn't solve them because she was on the side of the corporations and the banks, just like everybody else was. But that doesn't mean that the Russian collusion didn't happen. It's just not the unique factor that caused these things to be lost, rather than just a broader point about everything that led up to those points as well.
I wish, I really hope they put Andrea with Zach a lot more, because she makes him look good. I know that he was just laughing at her, so it's very funny to watch. Let's move on to.
Before we move on, I did watch the entire thing on stream.
You did on your stream, didn't you?
Yeah, they had a discussion about the doctor strikes where Andrea Jenkins essentially said, "I'm pro private healthcare," whilst justifying subsidies for private healthcare through tax cuts. And she also got smacked down when people called in saying whether or not they would prefer Farage or Polanski, and Polanski won 3-1 against Farage, and it was pretty good.
You love to see it. You love to see it. Very good. But let's move on, because we've got another 2 stories to cover. And obviously, we were a little bit late today from tech issues. Apologies. A host of pubs have banned Labour MPs as a protest over tax changes. Pub landlords are seemingly not happy about the new business rates, and one way of showing their frustration is to bar MPs from the Labour Party. Yet Chancellor Rachel Reeves claims she supported the British pub and created a tiered business rate, a progressive tax, if you will. 2 weeks ago, Labour Chancellor Rachel Reeves touted her support for the Great British Pub with a tiered system that lowers the multiplier for pubs, among others. Yet, on the same day, a separate agency reassessed valuations for business rates, and these went up. Now, as you can see from this graph, 3 pub chains, Mitchells and Butlers, Marston's and Fuller, Smith and Turner, saw a sharp increase in share prices at the beginning of December, and then saw a drop not long after. Of course, you could expect the share prices to increase in this period. It's Christmas, it's the festive season, but then why the fall? Seems odd. Now, despite pubs not being happy with business rates, they have enjoyed an increase in the number of patrons. Big operators said recently that festive bookings were up strongly. Customers are still prepared to splash out for big occasions, despite a general mood of caution in a sluggish economy. Marston said in a recent trading update that bookings for the Christmas period were up 11% year on year, while bigger rival Mitchells and Butlers enjoying an above average of 4.3% like-for-like sales growth so far this year. Reckoned the signs pointed to a cheery end to 2025. Now, despite more sales, pubs are typically a low profit industry. Therefore, any tax changes will be seen as more of a burden compared to businesses that rake in huge profits. But is the British pub dying? And is it really the fault of the government? About a quarter have vanished since 2000. The industry that has been in that time faced... I think I've read that wrong. Let me start that one again. About a quarter have vanished since 2000. The industry that has, in that time, faced a lackluster economy, a pandemic, a smoking ban, and shifts in drinking habits, while being financially hamstrung by long-term debts secured on properties that were, in some cases, no longer viable as pub habits shifted. Now, I think we need to be talking about the wider issues instead of just taxes. I mean, young people tend to drink less than older generations. There's also the lack of the third space. You know, for our parents and grandparents, their generation, the pub is their third space. Now, with the rise of the gig economy, a more atomized society, the cost of living and social attitudes, the pubs are no longer people's third space. In fact, our generation doesn't really have one. I mean, people are either at work or at home. There's no regular hangout for people anymore. Helena, we hear a lot about people we hear a lot of people talk about tax, especially pub landlords, but are taxes really their biggest problem?
I mean, I do think the business rates regime probably does need some reform. I like the idea of a tiered business rate system because there are quite a lot of costs associated with setting up even a small business like a small shop or a small pub or whatever that makes it very difficult to be part of this. But business rates are only a problem because of how much people have to pay on rent. Now, in terms of pubs, there are a lot of pubs who own their own premises, but a lot of these things will get a lot of these assets will be bought up by private equity. You look at city centres across this country, huge amounts of money is being made there, not by actually doing anything, but just by owning the actual real estate within city centres, which is where you'll want to be able to have a profitable business. And to get access to that, you need to essentially pay a tithe on top of whatever else you have in terms of business expense to private equity to be able to exist there in the first place. And business rates are somewhat tied to the value of the property that's there. But if the state owned these premises, if the state owned the city centre real estate that these people need access to be able to set up a business, they would not need to pay twice. They would just only you wouldn't need business rates. There'll be an income stream from businesses to local authorities in the form of the rent that they pay to be able to have access to these city centre real estate, and your business rates could be slashed massively. I think if we want to talk about a real problem businesses face in this country, it's landlords. Landlords are the problem because at the very least, money that gets spent on business rates goes back into the coffers for local authorities to be able to spend on public services for everybody. For example, you look at London, and it is an extra windfall from business rates and economic activity in London that's given the funds available for Sadiq Khan to be able to do a massive free school meal rollout in London. That's a good thing. The money that gets spent on real estate in rent for small businesses or whatever, that all gets funneled off into pockets of shareholders, probably off to the Cayman Islands or off into Panama to be able to be used to buy whichever of these shareholders is going to have their extra yacht the next day, the oligarch pockets, right? So I think that trying to blame the state for wanting to find any means with which to raise some sort of revenue for local authorities rather than blaming landlords seems like a bit of a misstep. Do I think that the current government, in lieu of big scale change, should be looking at ways to best be able to facilitate these little pubs to be able to do what they do? Of course, I think that that's true. Wanting to make it as economically viable as possible for these third spaces to exist in a country where these things have broadly died because it's a very difficult way of being able to make money, especially when you don't have access to the spaces available because real estate is so expensive. I think there's probably a happy medium with the situation we've ended up here, and a tiered system seems like a good one to me.
Yeah, I actually thought that the tiered system that Rachel Reeves was looking and looking to bring in, or has brought in, actually is quite a sensible idea. Like, it's in a way a progressive taxation kind of thing. I do think that the government needs to be looking at reducing rates for small businesses, not just pubs, but small businesses generally, because there is a huge monopolization of the economy, as we know, we discuss all the time when it comes to big corporates, and the big giants and the big brands always buy out the competition, and small, medium-sized businesses, especially small businesses, struggle. And I do find it somewhat frustrating when you have, it's usually pub landlords or small business owners always look at the government as they're at fault. They look at the budget and they say they're taxing aspiration or they're taxing me. And it's the same in way in which when people look at income taxes, in which the right wing fundamentally has wrong when they say, we want to reduce your taxes to improve your life. Well, of course, 20% taxes, which is what most of us pay, is really, really small for what you're getting. A bang for your buck deal, given all the public services we have. I know there's issues with it, we know that. But to me, I'm out of pocket when it comes to rent, when it comes to bills and food. And even if my taxes were slashed in half to 10%, that would make zero difference to my life. But if we had rent controls and I was paying 5 to 10% of my wage instead of 50, 60, 70% of my wage on rent, that would make a huge, huge difference. It's, again, kind of a similar conversation we were having last week, but you've got the petite bourgeoisie versus the rentier bourgeoisie, but they're all looking at the government to blame when actually it's the fucking landlords and the commercial rental properties that are destroying small businesses. I mean, I saw.
And then, again, I was going to say, but on an additional point to that, talking about rent controls and housing costs, imagine if we were living in council houses. Imagine if instead of paying rent to private rentier parasite landlords, we were paying money to local authorities to be able to fund public services within our council constituency. That'd be way better, and it would mean they wouldn't have to raise business rates to raise the revenue elsewhere, right? We're paying out huge amounts in housing benefit from the state because landlords are charging people through the nose, when if we actually had these things in public ownership, not only would we not be paying the housing benefit, we'd also be applying more revenue to local authorities. It's a fucked up system, and people are blaming people who've inherited a poorly stratified economy. Again, Labour plays some part to blame because of New Labour accepting Thatcherism in the 90s and 2000s. But at the very least, there needs to be some kind of funding for local authorities given the state of what's happened to them after 15 years, right? Like, I don't know if people know this, but I talk about it a lot, but I think it's really worth making sure we have this number committed to memory, that in the 14 years the Conservatives were in power, £15 billion of local authority assets were sold off, probably into the hands of private equity giants, the KKRs and the Blackstones of this world, for them to cream profit off of the top, rather than being locally owned for the community. Like, if you're watching at home, you owned that. That was yours, and it was sold off to pay for local authority deficits, which they now still have because they didn't actually increase their revenue. They just don't have an asset anymore. And that's an absolute travesty. And if we want to fix local authorities, they're going to need more money, whether that's from central government or from higher receipts from council tax and business rates.
I think it's also a fundamentally incompetent position because there's so many examples where local councils have sold council-owned assets at a loss. I really wish I can't remember the specific example, but it was a particular housing complex, I believe.
It was in Birmingham. It was in Birmingham. It was Ayub Khan who was the one who was fighting against it being sold off.
I mean, I don't know if it's, well, it might be the same one, but it was a £50 million sell-off. I don't think it's to do with the Olympic rental property, because I remember that was an issue, be sold off.
Right, okay,
that.
Yeah.
But that is another example. But this example I'm talking about, sold it for 50 million quid. They paid 100 million pounds up front, sold it for 50 million quid, and then it cost 50 million pounds to clear up all the waste around it. So basically, what you're having is councils are providing or using public funds to sort of private contractors, and we're getting nothing for it. It's just a complete and utter rip-off. If only small businesses and landlords looked at those, pub landlords even, not commercial landlords or housing landlords, looked at this, the issue of privatisation. And of course, housing is a good for people. Cheap housing, more money in people's pockets, more money to spend. Would you like to see, though, because I think I would, the government actually subsidising the pub and third spaces, not just through slashing business rates, for example, but other ways to keep them alive? Because I fundamentally believe in a state that doesn't, and you obviously agree with this as well, not just for numerical value or capital, but for social value too. And I do think the pub, even if you don't drink alcohol, provides a social value. I would be happy for my taxes to be spent on keeping some businesses afloat.
I couldn't see an argument against that. You're right, we do miss third spaces. And if we want to fix social problems, the state is going to have to invest in those things. And it's going to give us a working arrangement that's going to give us the time to do that too. In the situation we have ourselves at the moment, not only do the third spaces not exist, people don't have the time to use them because they're working 3 jobs. They're being incentivized to do a side hustle to make up for the fact that their job doesn't pay enough, which is then also being subsidized by universal credit. This is a myriad problem, and pubs are one part of that, but community centres and libraries and all that kind of stuff is what's important too. Me personally, I go to the pub sometimes, mostly to eat, but when it comes to a third space for congregation, I go to local game stores. You know, the MTG stands for Magic the Gathering. So having more spaces available like this is a really good thing for social cohesion. You know, if you want to fix a mental health crisis, give people places to meet their friends that don't rely on you spending money. Because we fucking ain't got any of that shit. We don't have any of that. One idea I will say, one thing to finish off, is that I have heard mutterings behind the scenes that trade unions have been thinking about putting money into their own community assets. And I'm just like, Reform have got their own pub. Reform have got a pub where they're using to be able to market themselves. Union pubs.
I love that. I love that, and you know what? When Reform, I mean that one pub. Where's the pub located? Actually, the Reform pub. Do you remember?
I forget. Let me do a quick Google for you.
So when Helena looks that up, a lot of people laughed. A lot of liberals like, "Ha ha, this is so funny," and I was thinking, this is genius. because it's sort of akin to a time when we had the Labour and Conservative clubs of the older generation. And it was the thing with politics is something that we've completely sort of been bereft of, is sort of community and culture. And the one thing that was so strong about party politics back in those days, when you had millions of members of political parties, like you would go to a Labour club and you would spend time there, and of course they've shut down. And Reform, to me, that almost bringing that back. It's genius to do a Reform pub. Of course, the pub looks like shit, and the beer they have on there, I mean, they look great. That's not the point. I thought it was a genius idea. And I mean, I didn't know about this potential union thing. I think it's fantastic. You've got the location, haven't you?
Yeah, it's in Blackpool.
Blackpool. I think it's absolutely
area.
Genius.
It's the ideal area because this is a place that's literally died because it doesn't have enough investment. Like the advent of cheap international travel, I mean, I think it's probably a reasonable thing to have access to if you don't use it too much for environmental concerns, right? But cheap international travel that essentially came about because we deregulated airlines in the 1980s has meant that it's cheaper to go on holiday to Spain, cheaper to go on holiday to Greece than it is to go to holiday in Blackpool. You look at these seaside resorts in the UK and the wastelands, Blackpool, Morecambe, places like that. Like, what, people don't go there anymore. So giving the locals that are there a way of being able to inject some investment in there, whether it's coming from a political party or a trade union movement, or indeed from the state, would be a good thing of being able to revive actual levelling up for these forgotten areas of the country, rather than the kind of half-assed levelling up we got from Boris Johnson.
Let's start a project. Left-wing pubs, socialist pubs. That's the future of the left. Let's go on to our next story. But before we do, I just want to show you a video.
For the last 45 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth from the working and middle classes to the top 1%. Billions of pounds have been taken from the workers and handed to the economic elites. In 2008, the world came to a standstill. The market had failed. Capitalism was in crisis. Yet 16 years on, nothing has changed. The bankers weren't jailed, the banks were bailed out, ordinary people lost everything. It's 2025 and we are now reckoning with a Labour Party that seeks to implement a Tory agenda. We face rising right-wing forces, more division, more misinformation. Yet no one in the mainstream media wants to talk about the real issue, the economic elites who have increased their wealth while the rest of us have become poorer. This isn't just a crisis of inequality, it's a crisis of democracy. The rich aren't just getting richer, they're owning everything. We are facing a global oligarchy and nothing is being done. Why? Because of our media. The same oligarchs who hoard wealth also control our press and now our social networks. This is why independent media isn't just important, it's necessary. It's why we're calling on your support. Turn Left is an organisation run by 5 volunteers working around our full-time jobs. Your contributions have already made a huge difference, whether by covering rallies, producing vox pops and interviews, or upgrading our equipment. That's all possible because of you. But we can do so much more. We can be far more ambitious. So head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, become a monthly supporter, or give a one-off donation. If you want to fight back against the billionaire class, then help us build a media for people, a media for planet, a media for socialism. Smash the oligarchs. Join Turn Left.
Oh, he sort of froze there. Don't know who that guy was, but he seems like he's quite sensible. Maybe you should listen to him. That's it. The future. Destroy the oligarchs and left-wing pubs. Let's go on to our final story. Yesterday at 6:47 p.m, police had received reports of shots being fired near Bondi Beach. Shots were fired from a footbridge towards people at Parkland Bondi Beach, where the Jewish festival of Hanukkah took place. Footage emerged where one of the shooters was incapacitated from a bystander.
Oh! Oh non, gros! Oh! Ouais, mais il y a son pote, il va se faire tirer dessus. Il est trop con, le mec qui a l'arme. Le mec est hyper courageux. Oh. Wesh.
The man's name is Ahmed Al-Ahmed, a Syrian national who served in the police. The father of two is currently in hospital after sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. His condition has been described as critical but stable. It has now been confirmed there were two shooters who are father and son. They've been named as Sajid Akram, 50 years old, and his son Naveed Akram, 24. The father was shot dead by police, and his son is currently in hospital in critical condition. Inside the gunman's car, two ISIS flags were found, according to an official. We have more information about the two shooters. Sajid Akram was a licensed firearms holder, having met the eligibility criteria for a recreational hunting license. He was linked to 6 firearms, all of which were believed to have been used in the Bondi Beach attack. Lanyon said he arrived in 1998 on a student visa. Home Minister Tony Burke said, without specifying from where. The visa was transferred in 2001 to a partner visa and later resident returned visas. His son Naveed Akram is an Australian-born citizen. Prime Minister Albanese said he had first come to the attention of authorities in October 2019. He had been examined on the basis of being associated with others, Albanese said, and the assessment was made that there was no indication of any ongoing threat or threat of him engaging in violence. I mean, this does seem to happen all of the time where authorities will know about these people or will have their suspicions and then wait until something horrific happens. Now, it has been reported that 15 people, including a 10-year-old girl, were killed. The police have declared this a terrorist attack. This is the biggest mass shooting since 1996, when 35 people were murdered in Tasmania. Now, shootings are very rare in Australia, but what is a regular occurrence is the political weaponization of a horrific mass killing. As always, people have speculated with their pre-existing biases before all the information was released. The right wing have already come to the conclusion that all Muslims pose a threat, and even though this seemingly looks like an extremist Islamist terror attack, Ahmed Al-Ahmed, the father and hero who stopped one of the gunmen, is also a Muslim. Yet many have still used this as an opportunity to spread their bigotry. Broadcaster and security expert who goes by the name of Daniel tweeted a picture of a Muslim reporter questioning why this was allowed. Of course, they were just simply doing their job. Right-wing journalist Peter Lloyd tweeted a list of attacks committed by Muslims. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire list, but you get his point, right? Yet somebody else has helpfully reminded him about all the attacks committed by Christians. Now, Nigel Farage sickeningly weaponized this attack, and he said, if Keir Starmer was really concerned with the hatred and violence against Jewish people, he would ban the Muslim Brotherhood. A man who's been accused of multiple allegations of anti-Semitic bullying as a teen, something in which he still hasn't properly addressed, should probably sit this one out. Now, are any of us surprised that Stephen Yaxley Lennon, also known by his fake name Tommy Robinson, got involved? Of course not. Strange that apologists are trying to downplay the massacre of Jews on an Australian beach because the guy who grabbed the gun was a Muslim also. Ahmed grabbed the gun because he's a brave man. The 2 gunmen killed 15 Jews because of Islam. Hope this clears that up for you. I mean, look how transparent the far right are being. He's literally admitting that if a Muslim does a good thing, it's down to the individual. If they do a bad thing, it must be Islam. The reality, it's always down to the individual. Most Christians, most Muslims, people in other faiths, most atheists are good people. It's the no true Scotsman fallacy in reverse. Zach Polanski, who was Jewish, by the way, posted a tweet condemning the attack, yet ultra-Zionist Jake Wallace-Simons took issue to it. I'm on my way to a Hanukkah event. It should be a celebration, but instead our community is once again mourning. I will be thinking of everyone in Australia and those around the world in the Jewish community who know this fear and loss. We stand with you. Jake Wallace-Simons quote tweeted with, "Not now, Zach." Zach, a Jewish man, is not allowed to speak up for the Jewish community, according to Simons, because he doesn't support Israel's genocide. Of course, what we all expected, opportunists are linking opposing the ethnic cleansing and slaughter of Palestinians to the killing of Jewish people. Ban all pro-Palestine demonstrations. They are a gateway to terrorism. Labour MP Alex Davis-Jones went on Sky News and joined in on the weaponisation.
I guess, the question as well is, does the government need to do more? Do you need to take a tougher line? Because, chants like from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, globalise the intifada, you hear this stuff. If you go to certain music concerts, if you go to certain protests, you will hear that.
And I want to be very, very clear that chants like that, any chants that are designed to intimidate, call for violence, call for the murder of Jews, are totally unacceptable. And the government has introduced new legislation in order to protect religious places of worship, because anyone who is seeking to protest outside of those venues needs to be very mindful of what they're doing. And I will defend the right to protest. The government will. It is a fundamental right of democracy. And there is a lot of people who are feeling very, very hurt about the actions of certain governments around the world right now, and they have a fundamental right to protest. What they do not have is a right to intimidate British citizens or call for violence in our streets, because sadly, we have seen the consequences of what happens when that is done.
Now, Sophie Ridge is also engaging in propaganda too. I mean, globalise the Intifada means globalising the struggle against oppression, not killing Jews. From the river to the sea is about Palestine being free from occupation, not killing Jews. But that doesn't matter to the establishment. Sky News have form. Trevor Phillips interviewed Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister with zero pushback.
You've just said, Ms. Haskell, that governments around the world, including the Australian government, could have done more to tackle anti-Semitism. What would you have expected them to do to prevent or anticipate this kind of attack?
Well, fight racism, fight violence against Jewish community, fight racism in workplaces as strong as possible. Look, when you see those hate march in the streets, whether it's London or Sydney, and in the Sydney Opera House, they chanted, "Gas the Jews, gas the Jews." Not even a single arrest, not even a single person who had to answer for that, but they tried to cover that. When you hear them chanting to globalize the Intifada, what do you think that means? Globalizing the Intifada mean exactly that. To go on massacres, shooting people in the streets, to violently attack them. This is what it means. And if you let that continue and run in your street, waving flags of terrorists, pictures of people who murdered innocent children, if you don't fight it, in your silence, you actually support that. You justify that. And to globalize the Intifada means exactly that. A terrorist attack on a beach in Australia where Australian civilians are being murdered and killed. This is what it means. So when you hear that, start acting, enforcing, persecuting, punishing so that people understand this is absolutely unacceptable. No racism, no violence will be accepted, not in Australia and not in the UK either.
But okay, in Israel, though. I mean, Israel should be nowhere near this. Talking to ministers from a terrorist state currently committing a genocide, talking about racism and violence. Are you serious? It's appalling. No surprise, but the BBC also platformed Gideon Falter, a Zionist agitator and chief executive of the bogus Campaign Against Anti-Semitism.
What do you want to see politicians here doing?
Well, Sir Keir Starmer said in the aftermath of the attack on Yom Kippur in Manchester, where 2 Jews were killed, we heard him say that he would do everything in his power to tackle this hatred, to fight back, and yet nothing has been done. The marches on our streets continue. The incitement, both on our campuses and on social media, continues unabated. We see this unbelievable two-tier policing where people standing up against extremism are being arrested, and the extremists themselves are being appeased by police forces who seem too timid to tackle the mobs in front of them. So what we really need from politicians is the kind of assertiveness that unfortunately has had to see us through many a crisis in the West before, where they name exactly what it is that we're fighting against, and they say, we will do whatever it takes, but then equip our police forces and, if necessary, our security services to take firm action, because at the moment that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing security services which are overwhelmed. We're seeing police forces where even after what happened in Manchester, we're seeing West Midlands police now being hauled into Parliament again because they decided it was simpler to ban Jewish and Israeli football fans from Aston Villa rather than actually police events properly. This sort of thing is all symptomatic of a rot that goes right to the top, and we've had 2 successive governments now since October 7th where they've seen the extremism really spilling out onto our streets, people celebrating all sorts of barbarity and depravity, and failing abjectly to make sure that our security services do what needs to happen, make sure that our police forces actually enforce the law. And unfortunately, we are the days where we can say things like, well, we're referring people to prevent, and we are, we're doing a risk assessment and we're taking things seriously and doing whatever's in our power. Those days are over. We now need to see action, and we need to see extremists, unfortunately, really being tackled and rounded up well before these attacks take place, not afterwards, as seems to be yet again happening here.
Okay, Gideon Falter, thank you.
Is he serious? He's saying the police are appeasing extremists, doing nothing about it. We're locking up grannies, for fuck's sake. We literally have thousands of people being locked up for holding signs saying, I oppose genocide, I support. These people, innocent people, older people, younger people, holding up signs because they're opposing a state which is ethnically cleansing Palestinian people. And the police are arresting them. There are currently hunger strikers where those are not going to be seen a court date for another 14 months. They're starving, they're dying, according to doctors. And this guy wants to say, oh, actually, the police are appeasing them. How about the fact that we're sending weapons to Israel? We've got fighter jets out there or surveillance jets out there. We're giving excuses to them. But we're coming down hard on Israel. I mean, this is the so-called pro-Hamas BBC, right? They had Gideon Falter on. Gideon Falter, who you'll remember last year, was a agitator. He said, I just want to be a pro-Israel march. No, there was a pro-Palestine march, and he tried crossing the road and causing disruption. There were literal Mossad agents around him, by the way. And the BBC are just platforming him, not pushing back, just saying that actually this is hate on the streets. And to those who say the pro-Palestine marches, the ceasefire marches, are full of hatred and bigotry and racism, making claims that gas the Jews are apparently shouted there. I mean, first of all, no one brought any evidence of that. And yes, there might be 1 or 2 fucking idiots. You get that everywhere. But are you going to say the same about the Jewish people and the Jewish bloc at these pro-Palestine marches? Are you going to call these Jewish people anti-Semitic? Of course they will, because Zionists do that all the time. Now, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu also weighed in. Netanyahu also blames the attack partly on Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for recognising a Palestinian state. He literally said that. He said that because Australia recognised Palestine as a state, they were complicit in this terrorist attack. You do not fight extremism with extremism. What happened yesterday was a disgusting, horrific extremist attack, but you don't then provide cover for a state that's committing genocide. That is extremism too. Helena, obviously absolutely devastating what happened. And my God, a 10-year-old girl was killed as well among 15 people. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the first thing I would say is that one of the reactions, it seems, that's coming out of Australia in response to this is that it looks like there is bipartisan support for stricter gun regulations. That can only be a good thing if that passes. Even the kind of the wackier elements of the right wing in Australia seem to want to acquiesce to those common sense gun reforms to try and ensure that people who do have history of being sympathetic to the Islamic State can somehow get a firearms license and have 6 firearms in the household. So there's more background checks. It looks like having a limit on the number of firearms people can store in the home. And I hope that legislation passes so that we can prevent these things from happening again. It's very difficult to prevent people who are susceptible to becoming an extremist from thinking those things and wanting to act on them. But you can take material steps to prevent them from having access to the things they need to have to facilitate the evil that they want to do. I do hope that legislation passes. Some of the reactions that I have seen have been some of those despicable reactions I think I've ever seen. That Jake Wallace-Simons tweet is probably the cream of the crop, I think, in saying to another Jewish man that he's not allowed to mourn the anti-Semitic massacre of his Jewish brethren because he has a different opinion on the state of Israel for being a Bundist rather than a Zionist is the most disgusting. I cannot put into words how absolutely fucking rancid it is from Jake Wallace-Simons, just all day tweeting at people who've never said anything anti-Semitic, who have no anti-Semitic bones in their body, who've never said anything about Israel other than we oppose the ideology of Zionism, and somehow saying that they're not allowed to express grief, to want to show sympathy and solidarity with the people who have been massacred in this clearly anti-Semitic terror attack because they disagree with him about the existence of the State of Israel, or even in some cases, the actions of the State of Israel, who after fucking AOC who voted for the Iron Dome funding bill, or abstained on the Iron Dome funding bill, right? She believes in a two-state solution, just like most people do, just like Anthony Albanese does, who clapped back at Netanyahu saying somehow the recognition of Palestine was a reason why these attacks happened. And Albanese has been very forthright and going back against Netanyahu for saying such things, which is at least something to see. And it's just crazy that in the wake of this, they've just allowed people to come on and just spread lies. Like Gideon Falter saying things such as the stuff that he said in the BBC, which wasn't actually in truth that he was saying about banning Jews from football matches. That didn't happen. There was no ethnic or even necessarily national component in the people who were banned from the Maccabi Tel Aviv game. They were banned based upon the fact that they were supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv. That was it. That was it. Jews were not banned. Jews turned up and went to the game, and they brandished Israel flags, as is their right at the event. And there was no problems with ultra violence at the event. But obviously he's allowed to go on TV and lie because these people never get policed in terms of the things that they say. You have an Israeli deputy foreign minister when the lead party in government in Israel believes in full ethnic cleansing of Palestine. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, apparently is anti-Semitic, when all it means is that the occupation ends. Yet the Likud party charter, which specifies that Israel must stretch from the river to the sea, and as a component of that, there is an ethnic component because it is an ethno-state, it's codified in Israeli law from the nation-state law, that it is an ethno-state. So that seizure of that land, the annexation of that territory to create an Israeli state from the river to the sea necessitates the expulsion and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The reverse does not. And yet she is allowed to come on British TV and accuse people who believe in a one-state solution, who believe in a unitary Palestinian state, which does not have an ethnic component to it, not like people try and claim that a Palestinian state would mean Jews leaving the Levant, because it clearly does not. I mean, not even Hamas say that it does. You know, Osama Hamdan specifically said that anyone can live in a future Palestinian state as long as they obey the laws, regardless of their ethnicity. Right? What it does do is mean that there is no ethno-state and there is no colonial occupation. But Likud do want an ethno-state, and they do eventually want to ethnically cleanse Palestinians. And she is allowed, as a member of a government that is led by that party, to somehow condemn people who are calling for the liberation of Palestine as people who should be, have their free speech shut down by law. That's what she was implying with her statement there. Ridiculous conflation and weaponization of what is an absolutely ghastly and incredibly upsetting terror attack that the whole world should be showing solidarity with, because rather than trying to weaponize for political gain. That's why I haven't tried at any point to do that myself, because it's the most. I don't know how anyone can do it. I don't know how anybody can weaponize this stuff for political gain. Honestly, it really disgusts me. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, that Jake Wallace-Simons comment is probably the worst. I mean, he is a rancid person. It is absolutely disgusting. It was so anti-Semitic. I saw a comment actually from someone who said, the shooting was not an anti-Semitic attack; it was an anti-Zionist attack. No, it was an anti-Semitic attack. I mean, gunning down Jewish people, going to a Jewish event and gunning down Jewish people is anti-Semitic. And if if there was a link between that and what's happening in Palestine, if those people did that because of what's happening in Palestine, that's even more anti-Semitic, because once again, as we say, you cannot conflate Jewish people with the state of Israel. It was fundamentally an anti-Semitic attack. And anti-Semitism is on the rise. Yet, I mean, this attack shouldn't have happened, but the fact that it happened, at least we can do is mourn the people who lost their lives. A 10-year-old girl was killed. She doesn't get to live the rest of her life out because some disgusting, depraved individual with their dad. I mean, I don't know who shot the killing shot, but two disgusting individuals killed a little girl, and we can't even mourn it because there are right-wingers and there are Zionists who want to immediately make this an issue about Israel, want to immediately condemn all Muslims, despite the fact that one of them was a hero who tackled the shooters to the ground. Really depraved stuff.
It is, and the thing as well is that, I mean, Jordan Shanks, who's an Australian commentator, brought this up in his video about the topic, saying, well, all those people who say, well, like, there doesn't need to be an Israeli ethno-state for Jewish people in Palestine. Well, you've just given an argument to every single person who believes that there should, because the main argument is that Jews aren't safe unless they live in the ethno-state. That's exactly the argument. And is it really difficult to kind of disagree with the plight of Jewish people in Western countries when they get killed in terrorist attacks, right? None of us believe that a colonial ethno-state is a good idea, but the argument that they make is that they need it to be safe. And if we can't guarantee safety of Jewish people in our countries by shutting down the kind of anti-Semitism that links Israel and the broader international Jewish community together, and it implicates Jews in the crimes of Israel, then they will continue to make that argument and they will continue migrating to Palestine. That's the reality. If we can't guarantee these people's safety, and we have to shut that shit down immediately, no matter who is saying it, right? This link, this conflation between broader international Jewish community and the project of Zionism, this has to end, and it has to end now. From all sides, it must stop.
I agree. I think let's wrap the stories up then. Let's go to our comments. Let's bring in Sarah, our producer tonight. Sarah, how are we? I think.
Sorry, I'm muted.
Yeah, there you go.
I actually said hello 4 times. I even sang it. But hello, yeah, good to have you guys. Oh, sorry, good to be here. Even. Really great show. Really, really informative. Let's start off with our super chats. So quite a few today. Thank you so much, James Holmes, for always pulling through. You always pull through. Gifted 5 10 left memberships. And then Baron von Cogslap Also gifted 10 Turn Left
Is
memberships.
that a call to violence against COG?
Cock slap.
No,
Yeah,
COG slap. What have you got against Ben?
And then Rachel said, American homosexuals are salivating at the story, but I can't remember what story this was about.
It will probably be the third one. I mean, because it's interesting, because Helena, you said obviously there is a bipartisan view that there should be tighter regulation on gun control. Absolutely. And you're seeing online American weirdos saying this is why we need more guns. And it's like the last mass shooting was like 10 years ago, and the biggest was obviously in 1996. It doesn't happen very often. That is why gun control is very good, and it should be tightened up even more, clearly.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a very famous, I think, is it Jim Jeffries, the comedian, who says about it? It's like in Australia, they had one of the biggest like massacres in like modern kind of Western history at Port Arthur in 1996, and they said, "Okay, you've had your fun, we're getting rid of the guns," and everyone's like, "Yep, that'll make sense." And then in America, like they have like school shootings with little children die, and the government tries to say, "Okay, we want to try and maybe take rid of some of the bigger guns," and the American public loses their shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll start off from the start. So Michael, hey Michael, said, is there anything Helena can't educate us on? She's so clever and articulate. It's so crazy you say this, Michael, because I was literally telling Helena at the start, I was like, why are you so intelligent, before we came on. And then Arthur said, I think we need a new definition in the Overton window for reform and stuff like the MAGA movement. Calling them right-wing, far-right, fascist, etc. just doesn't fit. What do you guys think about that?
Interesting. Thoughts, Helena?
I mean, it does feel like that the actual weaponization of these terms, I mean, it's good to weaponize them if you think that they have cultural sway, because I think they're accurate in terms of their description, but by using them specifically to try and get people to understand the severity of what they're trying to say,
I don't think it works.
I mean, it clearly isn't working, because reform is still ahead in the polls. You know, people have called them far right, right wing, alt right, radical right, dissenting disruptors is what more in common call them. None of these things are actually impressing upon the public the reality of what a reform mass deportation campaign would look like. And this is a mass deportation campaign that has a blueprint. It's what ICE are doing in America right now. That's what Reform UK would almost likely, or certainly do, if they got to this country. And for all of the negative opinions about Donald Trump and America and MAGA, which we do have in this country, nobody's connecting that to what the policy implications of that are. And having militarized police and deportation vans dragging people out of schools and nurseries and hospitals and their places of work to try and put them on deportation flights, that's basically the only way that you could do such a thing. And I don't think people are really connecting that together.
Do you think that Zach Polansky, when he calls Farage a fascist and reform fascist, do you think that helps him, hinders him, or do you think that makes kind of no difference? It's not his base.
I don't think it helps at all. And again, I think we need to talk about the economics, because people, again, the story about Farage racism, that's, you know, it's been doing the media rounds, it's been really good telly. Has it actually changed anyone's opinions? No. Well, Reform is still top of the polls, and it doesn't, they may have peaked, but it doesn't look it's really hampering their actual the way in which that they are portrayed by the public. And I think a lot of people just don't trust the media to report on their shit fairly. When you actually saw somebody who did see his mind changed, it was Big John, when he said, I was intending to vote Reform to say fuck you to the main parties, which is basically a lot of Reform's base at the moment. But then he personally was slighted by Farage and Zia Yusuf and saw their racism up close and personal. It was direct and something that he experienced them doing rather than being reported through the lens of the media. And it really changed his opinion and said, well, I'll no longer vote for you anymore. And that's what people will need to see from Farage, rather than media spin stories about what he may have said at Dulwich College, which I don't think is cutting through. Whilst I think it's important to call out the racism, the reality is people don't like Thatcherism. They don't like this deregulatory, neoliberal, austerity hellscape that reformer want to put us in, and we need to bring that front and center, as well as his links to people are negatively polarized against, which is Trump, which is Putin. Like, I think these things are far stronger than just trying to dredge racism scandals that, regardless of the veracity of these, regardless of the importance of these, is not actually cutting through to the public and undermining Farage's message.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. I don't think it has much of an effect when you say fascism or racism, because a lot of people say, oh, honestly, they'll go, oh, this again, everyone's racist. Like that, it doesn't wash on people anymore. Because I think you are arguing, to be honest, about something people don't really care about. You're trying to get someone agitated and angry over racism. If you're not really facing racism, does that get you out of bed in the morning? Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it doesn't. But what does... What is on people's minds is people's material conditions. It's rent, it's mortgages, it's whatever, things they can see in front of them. And that is where the left is obviously, as we know, we talk about all the time, that is where the left is at its strongest. I mean, I don't think Zach should ever shy away from it, but look, he's doing it right. He knows what he's doing. He is fundamentally bringing it back to cost of living and the economics.
I mean, I think that's true. And I think that when you look at the polling that's been done by More in Common, their focus groups with Reform UK voters, a feeling that the country is screwed, it's in decline, and wanting to reverse that and rejecting the failed political consensus is one part. But when it comes to the kind of opinions they have, it's actually a pretty disparate group, especially in terms of their economic proposals. Now, there's a lot of people you can peel off by focusing on that. And the two things that reform curious voters, people who say that they may vote reform but don't necessarily come up in voting intention polls as reform voters, the main thing that puts these people off of Nigel Farage is the idea that he's bought out by the super rich, that he's a corporate stooge, because he is. That's one big thing. And his relationship with Donald Trump and people like Elon Musk, right? Like, I think that if the left wants to beat Nigel Farage, you need to really kind of heighten the fact that we know that he is, just as corrupted by big money as the Labour and the Tories are. That's why it's important to have the Greens and your party as alternatives that don't take corporate money, rather, because Labour can't do this anymore. They can't run on integrity in public life because they don't fucking have any, do they? That's the way in which you actually be able to beat them back, saying, well, we are the party that are actually funded by the grassroots. We're not funded by crypto billionaires, the same crypto billionaires that Nigel Farage tries to talk up their business on LBC. Well, we don't know that they're a donor. That's the thing that happened, by the way.
£9 million, right? The biggest political donation in one go. 9 million went to reform. The idea that they're the anti-establishment, the idea that they stand up for the working class. Insane. I mean, they all take money from corporations. £9 million. I mean, to me, if you're American, that sounds like pennies to you. For us, it's a lot of money.
True. Oh, it's true. And Andrew Jenkins was on Jeremy Vine today saying she would ban all strikes. So,
ban all strikes.
Friend of the working class, eh?
Yeah. Friend of the working class. Winston Smith said, I don't understand this comment, so maybe someone can clear it up for me. Left-wing fever dream of the rise of the right, as that's all their imagination will provide them. Police protecting Christmas markets because of the right? Question mark.
I don't know what this means. I don't know.
I mean, it's Winston. Are you saying that the left, the rise of the far right, doesn't exist and it's all in our heads? But I don't. Why are you linking that to them? Police protecting excess markets because of the right. So, if I could deconstruct this, the rise of the far right is all in our heads, and also police are protecting Christmas markets not because of the far right, but Islamist extremists. Let me just explain one thing to people, and I've seen people say this on Twitter now, finally. Extreme Islamist terrorist attacks is not left-wing, it's far-right. Look at religious doctrine. Within the religious text, it's ultra-conservative. It's not left-wing, it's not progressive. Now, why do people think the left aligns with Islam? The left doesn't align with Islam. The left aligns with persecuted Muslims. We always stand up for those minorities, be you queer, Jewish, Muslim, disabled, whoever. If you're not someone who was typically benefited from the patriarchal society, we stand with you. It doesn't mean that we accept everything in religious doctrine, like Christianity, because they're fundamentally conservative. Look at the views when it comes to same-sex marriage, abortion, many other things. It would not align with the left. But there's this twisted idea from the right that Christianity belongs to the right and Islam belongs to the left. Therefore, any sort of extremist attack, whether it's David Amos, who was killed by an Islamist, that was a left-wing form of violence, or what happened yesterday. Crap. I'm sorry, it's all far right because it's ultra-conservatism. That's literally in its text. I mean, the term left-wing and right-wing came after religion. It came after it. So it doesn't align with the left in any way. And I'm pretty sure Winston was saying that. If you didn't, I apologize, but I think I can kind of summarize from that comment. It looks like that, you know, the police are protecting markets from so-called left-wing Islam. Bollocks. Complete horseshit.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that one. Again, like there's no like economic prescriptions coming from these things. This is all cultural stuff.
Yep.
And if you're going to look at the cultural predilections of Islamist extremists, it's ultra conservatism. It's ironic that, you know, Al Qaeda, the deep South in America, they have exactly the same opinions on ultra conservative religious people across the world in terms of how they view women and the role of women and gay people and trans people, and yet they hate Muslims because they first of all, when they don't realize that Muslims in America actually are pretty progressive on a lot of social issues anyway. Look at Zohra Mamdani waving a trans flag at a pride parade, you know. But second of all, the what they have in their minds eye of an ultra religious extremist Islamist, right? Someone who's an ultra conservative, like a Salafist or whatever, like a original interpretation Muslim in a kind of post radicalization era in like the 70s. That person has very similar views that they do. So I don't know why they seem to have such an opposition to the kind of theocracy that they want in America. For Christian nationalists, they want the Christian theocracy. Well, it's just the same theocracy that they have in, you know, fucking Brunei or some shit.
It's a team sport to them because they don't oppose, the right wing don't oppose Islam or Muslims on the perceived regressiveness, right? They'll say, why are you gay and standing up for Palestine? They throw you off a building as if they gave a fuck, right? It's not about the fact that the people like Tommy Robinson hate Muslims or Islam because of the scripture, because actually there's so much transferable content between the Quran and the Holy Bible, right? Christians, the fundamentalist ones, not all Christians, the fundamentalist right-wing Christians don't like Muslims, not because they hate their views, because they want to be the ones that are doing the oppression. They want to be the ones who are doing the theocracy. America is a fantastic example. America is technically a secular state, but what do Republicans want? They want a country based on the laws of the Bible. And yet they'll say stuff about ISIS, they'll say stuff about Islam and say, oh, over those countries, they want to dictate what they can do based on the Quran. You want to do the exact same thing on the Bible. There are states in America right now where child marriage is legal, and they turn around and say, well, Prophet Muhammad was a paedophile, yet these same people are marrying off children in America. But because it's white Christians, it's not the bad religion. At the end of the day, right, people need to understand nuance. Islam or Christianity are not good or bad religions. They are religions with good and bad texts. It's not down to the doctrine. I mean, I used to believe this. I used to be someone who was like the Sam Harris kind of guy. You know, Islam is the mother load of bad ideas. I used to believe that. I never had a material analysis. And then when I realized that actually materialism plays a key part in politics, I realized the actual doctrine within these religious texts made no difference. It was the individual people and whether they were good or bad. A Christian who takes the Bible literally and hates gay people is a bad person. A Muslim who ignores regressive scripture in Islam and is a progressive is a good person. It's not about race. It's not about your religion. It's about whether you choose to accept the good or bad parts about your religious doctrine. That's all it is.
Well, exactly. Like, just in the same way that you have Christian states where there is equality for people from marginalized, like, you know, sexual minorities. Like the UK, we are a Christian state. We still have an established religion, as much as I wish we didn't. We are a Christian state, and we have laws protecting people. And there are Christian states where they execute gay people, like Uganda, I believe, was the country that passed the gay execution bill, and there are Islamic states that are, have, not maybe that have where it's legal to exist as a gay person, like Bahrain, for example. There's a more liberal in terms of kind of cultural norms that are allowed in Bahrain, and yet there are also some states that are incredibly repressive, like Saudi Arabia. There's never a universal approach in which a religion is applied in terms of statecraft, and people need to be more accepting of shades of grey in between.
That is really interesting.
Well done, Winston, though. We've spent quite a good segment on his comments, so I tell you what, you've done all right there.
I picked it myself, but there was this one as well, because I find that a lot of analysis always goes back to Thatcher, but I do find this quite interesting because it's true. As Jamie Alice said, it always comes back to Thatcher, and I was like, I don't disagree with that.
All roads lead to Thatcher and Osborne. There are so many things. I mean, I make it my my life's work to pretty much try and link everything to Thatcher when I can. I don't know what in reference to the story is. I'm guessing the second story about pubs.
I think it was about pubs, and this, and this kind of goes into it as well. As Loris said, the young generally have grown up not drinking. Many, the gym seems to be their third space now. It's not mine, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not considered young anymore.
Oh, come on. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're down for it, the gym, fine. I just don't see gym as a third space because typically it's quite an individual thing. You go to the gym and you work on yourself. I mean, of course, there are. My partner, she'll go to like Pilates or yoga, but again, it's you're not hanging out. You're following the instructor, so I don't see how the gym is a third space. If that works for you, though, great. But like, there is a lack of third space for us young people. Just like, I just want to chill out. I mean, the thing is, though, I've worked in hospitality like my whole life. When I was living in Nottingham, I worked at a pub called the Red Lion. And I mean, it's the same for all pubs across the country, right? But you would get the same punters at like 10:30 in the morning with nose up, pressed against the glass, like, "Are you going to open yet?" And I'm like, "Give me fucking 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. Are you going to open yet?" And like, at the time, I was like, "That's really sad." And you got blokes in their 60s, 70s, 80s drinking the same drinks, sat in the same spot with the same people every single day. Okay, maybe it's a bit excessive, but there is one thing they have that was kind of missing, is that routine of community, of going to the same place and hanging out with the same people. And that's something that we don't really have. Of course, that generation have a bad alcohol problem because they'd spend literally 24/7 at the pub, but we've replaced it with nothing. And I know that younger people don't drink as compared to other generations, but Helena, as you said, that there are other things to do. Well, there should be other things to do, but it just feels like, I've got to spend money to do something. In fact, when it comes to like drinking and go to the pub, it's sort of like, yeah, I can do that, but I've got to spend loads of money just to hang out.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who's watching who feels like they don't have a community space to go to, start playing. You may not think you want to play board games, but they are much more fun than they have sounded from the things you've done, especially like the modern generation of board games that are. That I found. I personally am a bit of a nerd. I find them incredibly interesting. Give it a go. Most local game stores will have a collection of board games that you can use, and it's like the one I have around the corner from me is called the Dice Cup in Nottingham. Free plug. Other local game stores are available. You can pay £8 and you can play board games all day in their space, and they have a giant collection of everyone that you could think of that you can try out, ask for advice, take your friends, and for £3 you can come and use their space with your own games. For £8 you can use their library, and it's for all day. I mean, sure, it does.
Can I take my
mean
PS4?
spending money. It does mean spending money, but it's
Yeah.
it does mean spending money, which is, and if we had like a public, like a library space where it's that, and it could be done free at point of use. But at the very least, it's cheaper than getting multiple rounds in at the pub.
Yeah, I just stay at home really. But I love a board game. I love watching Deal or No Deal if I can get back home in time after work.
I love a board game during Christmas though. When it's Christmas Day and you crack out the board games, I love it. Although I'm fucking pissed by that time anyway, because like for me, people's Christmas is different. I don't know, people can probably tell that I come from a family where alcohol is kind of part of our lives a little bit. And growing up, when I say growing up, I'm not like 10 years old, I'm talking about like 15, 16, 17. it would be like you wake up, your bacon sandwich, and you crack open a beer already, and you've just pissed the all day. But I do love the games. I love the games
too. Just don't play Scrabble with me. I do try and steal a letter. I'm terrible. I'm such a cheat.
Cheat.
So I am a cheat. But I will go to this one. I think it's probably the most serious comment, and then we'll go to other ones. James said, the longer we spend talking about anti-Semitism, the more we allow Israel to dictate the narrative. Israel is a genocidal racist state. I don't know if you guys wanted to respond.
No, I totally reject this. I totally reject this because again, it's important that we talk about anti-Semitism when the really important anti-Semitic actions happen. That we reject them, and 100% we have to reject these things because there is always going to be anti-Semitism, and it will always be heightened when people conflate the actions of Israel with the broader Jewish community. So when real and disgusting acts of anti-Semitism happen, they must be talked about and they must be stamped out. They must be eradicated from our society. The anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society because all it does, as I said, is it furthers this notion that Jews cannot live in countries other than Israel without living in fear. And if we can't provide them that security, if we can't provide them with a world without that fear, they'll move to Israel. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I think if we don't, it's our duty to call out weaponization of anti-Semitism and call out real anti-Semitism, because if we don't do that, you're going to get more and more people downplay real anti-Semitism, because you see it all the time now. You see it like, oh, I don't think that was anti-Semitic. I think it was just anti-Israel. And 99.9% of the time, it is just anti-Israel because the weaponization of anti-Semitism is a really big thing. But it's important for that 1% when something's anti-Semitic that we don't abandon these people, and we don't abandon truth, and we don't allow people to think that anti-Semitism isn't the problem. So I think it is important we talk about it, because that we can say we still care about anti-Semitism, even though most of the time we are talking about the weaponization. We care about it, and what happened yesterday was fundamentally anti-Semitic. There is no other way you can look at it. Just like what happened, I think it was in Manchester, the stabbings, right? That was anti-Semitic. You're killing Jewish people. I mean, you couldn't get more anti-Semitic than that.
Yeah, like I just don't understand this. I really don't understand. Like, I don't know if James meant what he meant, like, because I saw his comments after.
No, I don't think he meant it in any bad way.
But I actually do think we have to call out this separation. Like, when we say, I think we've been saying this consistently for months, and I always go back to this, that we need to stop conflating. Sorry. What do we say? Sorry, my brain's completely fried. What was I going to say?
What, Israel and Jewish people?
Yes, the state of Israel with Jewish people. Like, I think when we start collapsing them into one, we end up just putting a massive target on Jewish people, and then I think that's when people end up being complicit in the harm towards Jewish people. So yeah, I completely agree. Curtis, this one's for you. A question, Michael, I'm picking on you. I think someone once said I have my favourites. I don't have favourites, but I do tend to pick one person. Comments.
Can I explain MTG?
Yes.
Well, I know that MTG stands for Magic the Gathering, and it's a game about magical cards.
Is it?
I'm not wrong, am I? I've seen you play it, Helena, and I can't say. I don't fucking get it. It looks like the most impossible game to get into. I've seen Helena play it a few times, and I'm like, what are you playing?
What's the game?
I don't know. I'm like a boomer looking at a fucking brand new iPhone. Worse than that. I have no idea. I think you should probably. Can you explain MTG?
Yes,
I'm monking out. Yes, I'm monking out now.
I mean, I'm not allowed to say anything, apparently. I'm not allowed to explain.
No, ignore Michael. She's allowed.
Okay, I'm allowed. I've been given permission by Curtis
now. Thank you,
My show,
sir.
you can explain what it is.
Thank you, sir, Curtis.
It's true. But yeah, like, so you have both people have a life total of 20, and you have a hand of cards. There are different types of cards in your hand. The main cards you have are lands and spells, and you use the lands to generate mana to cast the spells, and you use those cards to make your opponent's life total from 20 to 0, either by by casting creature spells, which summon creatures to attack your opponent, or other spells that you cast against your opponent to reduce their life total. That's broadly the long and short of it. And it's a turn based, so every player has a turn. And they draw a card at the start of their turn.
Where do you play this?
See, simple, really.
Where do you play it? Is it like?
Oh, at the same local game store that I mentioned before, the Dice
I love
Cup in
that.
Nottingham.
I want to play.
But also, I travel for tournaments as well. So there are local tournaments in the UK that I
pro in the
travel
house.
to, like every other weekend usually. So I was in Wakefield last weekend playing Magic, and the next weekend I'd be in a different place. And then I have travelled in Europe to go to the regional championship. So I was in Naples last year and Lille last October, and I'll be off to Turin next March for next year's regionals that I've qualified for. And if you do well at the regionals, you qualify for the Pro Tour, which I've also been to. So last year I was in Chicago. So this year I was in Chicago and Las Vegas to play in the professional the Pro
Yeah,
Tour.
like she's actually legit.
This is like profesh. I'm too stupid for this stuff. I'm too stupid.
No one's too stupid for it. Honestly.
Who's at 93 says, I would pay to watch Turn Left play Dungeons and Dragons. Why would you pay to watch us play a PS2 game?
Yeah, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons.
I mean, I hate RPGs, so you're not gonna rope me in.
Oh, fair.
What does RPG stand for?
So, I mean, role playing game in terms of what Dungeons and Dragons refers to is literally what it says in it. It's a game where you play a role. But Dungeons and Dragons is specifically a party of people venturing into a dungeon, essentially.
Oh my god, I don't want to go into any dungeon with anyone.
Yeah, no, I can't do role playing. I don't want to. It's like cooperative. I don't do that. I do competitive.
Is it? It's not similar to what's that film with Sean William Scott and Paul Rudd?
Role models. Yes.
Role models. Is Dungeons and Dragons like that, where they're like?
No, that's live action role playing. So Dungeons and Dragons, it's all done with like paper and pencil, and you roll dice, and you kind of you. There's a dungeon master who is the person who creates the world. Everyone kind of plays along in their heads, I guess. But LARPing is where you do that kind of thing, but it's in person, and you dress up like they do.
Would you ever do that?
No, I don't like either of them. I don't like role playing games in that sense. I like RPGs like Fallout and stuff like that. Like video role playing games.
I need to be careful because I know that like people in our stream like these sorts of games, and I'm trying not to be a dick.
Like again, video role playing games where it's just about building your character up through leveling up. Again, like the Fallout games, I very much enjoy those. But
I like
in-person role players like Dungeons and Dragons and GURPS and stuff. No, I don't enjoy that at all.
I like co-op games. I mean, I used to play with my brother when I was younger. Shrek 2 on the GameCube, and that was a fucking banger of a game.
What's co-op?
And I was a donkey. Cooperative. What's co-op?
A socialist channel.
Yeah, exactly. Not very socialist, are you? You play with each other. You team up with each other, and I think
like Crash Bash.
Yeah, but I play Shrek 2 with my brother. I think I was Shrek and he'd be Donkey, and we play. It was a great game.
Yeah, I like that. I like those sorts of games. I like Tekken. I used to play that. I used to play this game called Time
I never
Crisis.
played Tekken.
I always hated the beat 'em up games. They were never my thing.
Yeah, they were never my thing.
I enjoyed Soul Calibur 2. I did enjoy Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube. That's how long it's been since I played one of those.
You know, I never played Street Fighter, but I used to play a game called Streets of Rage. And I love that one. The soundtrack to that is like insane. It's probably like 80s banger music. And yeah, I mean, I used to be honest, I'm such a fucking basic bitch. Like the games I would play is like Call of Duty. I used to play Warzone online. Love that fucking.
You're playing American military propaganda.
Yeah,
honestly,
boring.
give me
And
that
also-
American propaganda. I fucking eat it up. Like, yes,
No,
gobble
smash
gobble.
it.
Military industrial
Gobble,
complex. Gobble gobble. Don't fucking clip that anyway. None of you clip that because that's a bad one.
And this.
I've got a Switch. A Switch Lite. That's quite good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go to this comment. I mean, I'm glad you started this actually because I saw this. It made me laugh. Nice chainmail jumper, by the way, Curtis.
Yeah,
How
Graham.
the Crusades going, pal?
I starred that one. Huh?
You're just back from LARP, right?
Yes. the whispering eye. I noticed I started that one because Graham fucking made the same joke the last time I wore this jumper, and I like this jumper, and he was like, "Oh, nice chamber jumper, bro." I'm like, "This is actually quite a nice one." I found it downstairs. I thought I lost it, and I found it.
It needs to be lost.
Graham, you bastard. Love you really, but you bastard. Yeah, and we'll be here until we're 60, 70, 80 years old when GTA 6 comes out. In fact, I don't think I want to buy it now because of the union thing. Like, I'm so pissed off the way they, especially Rockstar, started off like a lot of their content in GTA was anti-capitalist. They were like, yeah, we're proper like down to earth bros, and now they've just turned into the most pro-capitalist like gaming studio and won't even pay their workers properly.
When it's just that always that that kind of conflict between the people who make art and the people who the people who own the companies who make the art. You know, it's like this was weird. Like when people try and say that, well, the people who are jacking up the price of vaccines are the people who work for Big Pharma. I'm like, no, it's because Big Pharma is owned by capitalists, which is the people who engineered these things are somehow implicated here. Come on.
Yeah.
And just the last comment. I go to the gym 8 days a week.
Chad. The gains will not make themselves.
Yeah, facts.
The only gains I care about is for the working class. Ayo.
Hey.
Oh, wow.
No, I need to get to the gym. I went yesterday, and first time in like a month, but I go swimming. I need to trim down a bit before I try and bulk up.
Do you go to aqua aerobics?
No.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm done. No, don't do that. Anyway.
I've done it once. It was great. Right, guys.
Get out of here, Sarah.
Yeah, get out of here. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was a fun comment section for a Monday as well. This is usually like it's usually like a Friday sort of vibe, but I guess we're all fucking delirious.
I guess we just needed something to take the edge off of the fact that we deal with a really quite grim and upsetting segment at the end there. So
yeah, do you know what? I think we all needed that.
We did.
But of course, that is all we have time for. Thank you so much to our viewers who tuned in, and of course, once again, thank you, Helena, for joining me tonight. You've finished your streaming, so I can't raid into you, but make sure you go follow Helena. It's at NoJusticeMTG. Follow her on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Patreon, YouTube. There's something else in there, Helena, have I missed? Facebook and Blue Sky. Give Helena your money. Give us your money. And support independent media. Now, of course, remember to like the stream. And of course, if you're not a subscriber, hit that button. And if you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you so much. And you'll be seeing not me, but Ben McLean on Wednesday. See you next time.